Hello, I'm Dr. Vicky Cleek. I'm a consultant psychiatrist with a special interest in ADHD. I work with adults, and today we're going to cover the effects of ADHD on your driving. So not everybody who has ADHD is successful in learning how to drive, and in fact many of the people that I see have abandoned efforts to do so because they failed their driving test on numerous occasions, often as a result of lack of attention and impulsivity in action. So what do we know about ADHD and driving? Well, we know that those who have ADHD are at much higher risk of being involved in a road traffic accident, particularly in their teens, because teenagers obviously haven't got a fully developed brain and they are more likely to make impulsive decisions. And if you've got ADHD on top of that, particularly if you're a woman and there's the hormonal element tagged in, that risk can increase even further. Also take into account that those people with ADHD are more likely to try alcohol and to not be able to stop drinking alcohol once they start. And again, you've got this toxic mixture, particularly in teens, that can really put them at high risk of being involved in accidents. Some studies have shown that excessive speeding is a good predictor for ADHD in adults. And in fact, one of my bugbears is the DVLA. When a person gets pulled into a speeding awareness course, never gets screened for ADHD. And I think that would be really important to just highlight how many people who are on speeding awareness courses may in fact have underlying ADHD that has not been properly addressed or identified, and could be helpful in terms of society to do so. We also know that people with ADHD are much more likely to get speeding fines, speeding points, and in fact it's something I routinely ask my patients in terms of an ADHD assessment, much more likely to have their licence revoked, and that is actually more likely the case in males with ADHD than with females. One thing I will say is that in my experience of seeing patients in clinic, there is also a group, particularly of women, who don't have any accidents at all despite clearly having ADHD. And I think that is due to a combination of two things. Either their symptoms are such and their coping mechanisms developed over a period of time are such that they are quite rigid and careful in how they drive, because they appreciate that their lack of attention puts them at risk. So they've already put in place some of these strategies. Or they might have comorbid autism traits as well. And the autism traits actually really pull them in line in terms of putting a brake on that impulsivity and ensuring that they plan really carefully how they drive and when they drive. There's no research on this, but this just reflects my clinical practice and what I've noticed in talking to a lot of women with ADHD. So what is it about ADHD that means you're more likely to be involved in road traffic accidents? Well, it's not surprising. We've got the inattention and distraction. We've got the impatience, so difficulty in waiting in queues and traffic. Anyone that I see turning around in the middle of a traffic jam or circumventing traffic and going via going onto the hard shoulder instead. All those who weave in and out of traffic, I've always got in my head, maybe they've got ADHD, perhaps. Poor time management, so often people with ADHD are in a rush, and so that's much more likely to make them involved in traffic accidents. This emotional dysregulation, so feeling upset and angry, can really affect your driving, as can losing your keys and forgetting items that you need to go back for in your car. Difficulty sitting still. If you have a long journey and you are just trying to get there as soon as possible because you're late, you may not want to do the stop and rest, which can really help with improving attention, particularly in those with ADHD. And this impulsivity, so running the lights because you think that you can just about get there, making that snap decision and not really seeing the bigger picture. So in terms of the DVLA, actually you have to tell the DVLA if you've got attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, if you feel that or your ADHD medication affects your ability to drive safely. In fact, we know that from research that those who are treated for their ADHD are less likely to get involved in road traffic accidents. So it may be worth having a conversation with your doctor about this, but it is your responsibility to contact the DVLA. And in fact, online there is a form A1 that you can complete, and the DVLA will then send that to your doctor, who will have to complete part of it as well. What are the consequences of not telling the DVLA? Well, I think the biggest consequences is if you are involved in a road traffic accident and your insurance company finds out about you not having told the DVLA about your ADHD, then that may well affect your coverage. So as I've said before, there's no current law demanding that you inform your car insurance provider about your ADHD or about your medication, but I wonder whether if they find out and you haven't told them, and that is a factor, that they will turn around to you and say that actually you're not covered. So that's really something you need to consider. No doubt about it, as I said, those people who are treated for their ADHD have got a lower risk of being involved in road traffic accidents. And of course that also extends to minor bumps and scrapes. You know, when you're turning around in the nursery car park, people with ADHD are much more likely to get involved in have bumps and scrapes, which is costly and does impact on your car insurance. Treatment, medication treatment of your ADHD makes a difference, a big impact on your performance as a driver in terms of your attention and concentration, your ability to think before you act, so be less impulsive. Also not get involved in shouting at the children in the back, be much more calm and focused. All of that is going to make driving easier, less risky. So there are some practical solutions to reduce the risks in addition to actually taking the medication. The first thing is making sure you put your phone away, you switch it off, or you disable the notifications. Putting your phone in your glove compartment means that there's no temptation just to check it while you're driving if there's a message sent to you. Knowing your routes in advance, so not getting flustered, and again it improves your time management. If you know the route in advance, you have a good sat nav on board. Taking frequent breaks in long journeys with a good walkabout really helps with your attention and concentration for everybody, but particularly so for those people who've got ADHD. Obviously avoiding eating and drinking whilst driving, ensuring that your children in the back are entertained rather than them sort of having arguments, because that can be incredibly distracting. And I think the other thing to think about is driving when your medication is most effective, and trying to avoid driving when your medication is worn off, like at night. So these are things that are really helpful to consider in terms of your driving habits. So in summary, we know that ADHD does significantly affect your driving risks, and that treatment of the ADHD and putting in some simple modifications can reduce those risks. And we're not just talking about risk to you, but we're also talking, because you're driving essentially a large weapon, safety of everyone else, your family who you're driving with, but also pedestrians and other drivers around you. So now's the time to sort of self-reflect and thinking about my website ADHD workbook, drvickykleek.co.uk. How has ADHD affected your experience as a driver? Did it impact on your ability to get through the test? Has it led to you having more infringements than maybe those around you? And going forward, what changes can you make to ensure that your risks of road traffic accidents is reduced, and that your safety as a driver is secure? So I hope you found this helpful in terms of thinking about your driving and ways to reduce risk going forwards, and as a summary of the impact of ADHD on your driving. I'll see you at the next video.